the kids I talk about and the adults I work with, and they're a lot like me. So, adolescent stress-based trauma interventions informed by neurobiology. We're going to be talking about the brain. And actually some very exciting research that's coming out about the brain. The adolescent brain is under construction. Now, we say that adolescents can vote at what age? And what age can you get married? In what states can you get married earlier?
Any of them with parental consent.
Any of them, okay, and without parental consent? Mississippi, 14. I know this from personal experience. I actually lived in Alabama, and when my boyfriend said goodbye to me, I was 15, on the Greyhound bus because I was going up north. He proposed we elope to Mississippi, where we could get married at 14. I thought, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. It was hard enough living in Alabama, but getting married at 15, man. But I felt wanted, and that was good. You know, an adolescent girl, you want to be wanted. So, okay. When can you rent a car? 25. The car rental companies know something that the rest of us don't, which is the brain stops growing at 25. Up until that point, the brain is still growing, still under construction, if you will. And that's something that can be very, very helpful. We had a terrible event in a sense in my family, and that is a nephew of mine went on a skiing trip and wound up going down a path that had been blocked off, but due to heavy snow, the things didn't look, and he wound up hemiplegic, which means he's paralyzed along half of his body. They thought he was going to die. The thing that helped him, because he had such massive brain damage, is he was 14, and his brain was still growing. And parts of his brain were able to compensate for the other part of his brain. We know the brain does this. It does this with physical injury, and it does it with trauma. So, as awful as it is to have trauma as a child, as awful as it is to have trauma as an adult, the brain is still growing. The brain can compensate. The brain is under construction. These are not death sentences. These are not death sentences. The brain is constantly making linkages, pathways to connect it to what it most needs. The big thing with the brain, and I love this because I remind myself of this when I look at my desk, is that the brain strives to be efficient. And that's what I need to do with my desk. And what the brain doesn't need, it prunes. And as scary as that sounds, it's actually kind of exciting. We are born with masses of neurons, and from the moment we're born, or some say before we're born, as the brain is developing while we're in utero, the brain is making sense of the environment and linking things. And when it doesn't need, it gets rid of, because, it then has highways to get to places as opposed to meandering country paths. So, what the brain doesn't need, it gets rid of. If trauma is part of what the child's responding to, then the trauma gets hardwired into the brain. So if loud noises, if being hit, if being food deprived is part of what your brain says, boy, this is going on, we've got to figure out how to deal with this, then your responses to that get hardwired in, which is kind of good because that ensures survival. The brain is all about getting us to survive. This is the legacy of trauma, is that we do have these responses that do get hardwired in. But brain development is dynamic. It's not just because it's hardwired in, we can't do another overlay on it, or we can't do a bypass on it as we learn other responses. It's important to respect, though, that that's what's in there. That's what's in there. And it's not probably going to go away, even though it can be compensated for. How trauma is stored. The reason why this is important is really in the next slide, but I'm not going to go through all the parts of the brain. There's this cute little thing called the amygdala. It's like cute and kind of cuddly. If you look at the brain diagram, then you go look at that part, you go, ooh, it's kind of little. It's kind of like the rest of it is like big and gray, and there's the amygdala, and it's kind of little sweet thing. And it responds to a lot of emotional stimuli, but mostly fear and anxiety, and it's kind of our threat-sensitive indicator. This is the part of the brain that, when we talk about being wired to say, is this a problem or not, this is the part of our brain that says, this is a problem, And when we say we don't listen to ourselves, this may be the part of us we're not listening to. It's the amygdala. And this is a structure that integrates emotional experiences, both pleasurable and adverse. The key in trauma is this is the part that's responsible for determining which memories are stored and where they are stored. I was thinking as I did this talk today, somebody was going to ask me about, repressed memories. Should we get our repressed memories unrepressed? And you remember that whole controversy we went through? I still don't know what to say about about that, other than there are certain memories we have, I have, you have, and God knows the kids and the adults we deal with have, that are not going to be remembered. And that's because the amygdala communicates with the hippocampus. The hippocampus is actually kind of like, the amygdala is like the director, and the hippocampus is kind of like the storage bin. And problem is, if we are really upset, it's really hard for our brain to work optimally, which means memories are stored as fragments. Or they're stored in our body, and they're not literally stored in our visual memory. Or they happen to us so young that we didn't have words. So they're not stored as words. They're stored as sensation. They're stored as feeling. Which means when we're triggered, and people who have trauma are triggered. This is natural, it's normal, it's not like there's what's weird, what's up with this? Triggered, it means when we're triggered, the trigger can be anything that sets up a feeling, but it may not be connected. If it's a body memory, it may not be connected. So it may not be so easy to say, oh my God, I'm feeling anxious, because we're just feeling anxious. You're saying, what's up? What's going on? Well, something has happened. We've been triggered. People have been triggered by words. People have been triggered by light. What is one of the biggest triggers? It's also when we talk about self-soothing. It's a big self-soothing thing. But what is one of our first senses as a baby? It's so important to us. Smell. Smells are big triggers. But they also hold a key towards self-soothing. I have a story that will embarrass my son a little bit. Not too bad, I hope. One time, my husband and I were going out, and our kids were little, and we hardly ever left them, but we did leave them. And I said to the babysitter, who was a son of a friend of mine, I said, look, if the kids get anxious, just put a sweatshirt in their crib, and that will help them calm down, because it will have our smell in it, and young babies need that. And he didn't quite understand me, so I live in a very old house, and it's kind of drafty. And I came home, and he's there without a shirt on. And I said, Nash, hi. He said, hi. And he's blue. I said, where's your shirt? He said, well, the kids were crying, so I gave them my shirt. But it's like, that's a way to comfort a baby, is to give a baby something that smells of you. So you don't have to get in the crib with them. You can literally give them something that smells of you. And it calms the baby down, because smell is so important. The thing is, not all trauma can be remembered, and maybe it's good it's not all remembered. This isn't all about like we flush the system, we remember it all, we get past it. Our trauma is part of who we are, it's part of the adolescents we work with. I don't particularly, at this point in my life, want to get rid of anything that's part of who I am. Most kids I know don't want to get rid of who they are. So it's what we do with it. It's not if we can expunge it. So this isn't about how do we expunge trauma from kids, it's how do we all learn to manage trauma. As a result of this, some trauma is stored in the brain as body or sensory memories, some are sensations, and some are just memory fragments. They're just a fragment. There's a client I'm dealing with who had enormous trauma before he had words. He's been working for a while now with a massage therapist who I also work with about how to deal with the body memories that come up because they're not verbal for him of terrible things that happened to him when he was a baby. Terrible things that happened to him when he was a baby. And he's working through them and learning to soothe around them as he's also evoking them by having a massage where parts of his body are touched. Wouldn't that be great in adolescent care to have a massage therapist? Wouldn't that be great on the staff? Now, seriously, as a way of dealing with vicarious trauma, to have a massage therapist? How about we use aromatherapy? All these things which sound so crazy actually have biological research behind them now. And you had your hand up. Yes.
Well, I work in a school-age clinical dependency in an outpatient setting that is connected to the school, and as you say that, I'm a massage therapist.
Oh!
And a social
Break
worker.
time. Massage therapist, social worker, my idea of a good time. I can talk and feel good.
I'm trying to integrate it, and I love the neurobiology of trauma. But I think when the environment is that kids can't hug each other and can't receive a hug, there's
Come and sit down if you want.
really don't get enough effort into looking at what is healthy touch. I think we're really clear about what's unhealthy and so reactive in our anxiety about it that kids are not allowed to touch each other. And I think sometimes about the developmental damage that does when you can't deprive a growing human being of touch and expect that they'll develop normally.
It's to summarize, what's your first name?
Nicole.
What Nicole has said is we've gone overboard with saying no touch in environments with children and what is a good touch and how do we figure that out. And the reality is it's so individual and it's so different at different points in time that there are no standards. But what I hear Nicole saying, and I think a takeaway for her is going to be maybe we need to rethink touch as part of trauma in a trauma-informed environment that is conducive for the well-being of children. The touch is a part of that. We can't say, we're going to figure out all these verbal strategies and we're going to figure out all these inner strategies, but no one is still going to touch each other.